All right. Welcome to the Nunnsense podcast. I'm Caleb Nunn. If you haven't been paying attention, Dallas sports are once again doing that thing where they show just enough competence to keep you emotionally invested and just enough dysfunction to ruin your evening. The Stars are winning, but not without stress testing your blood pressure. The Mavericks, they're flashing a future. While they're still actively trying to unload street clothes Davis, the Cowboys hired a defensive coordinator who understands coverage, which already makes him overqualified, and the Rangers are trading hope and dreams for actual pitching, which is either genius or insanity, depending on the week. Here, we got no real hot takes, no fake outrage, just what's real, what's broken, and, well, what we're pretending is fine. Now let's get into it. So we're going to start off with the Dallas Stars. They're trending up, but with caveats. The Stars went 2-1 in their last 3 games since the last episode, highlighted by a 6-2 dismantling of the Bruins of Boston. And honestly, that alone deserves a little bit of an acknowledgement. Things still aren't as clean as they should be, but the fact that those 2 wins match their total from the previous 10 games tells you just how bad that stretch was. That 2-8 skid, really 2-10, if you trace it back to December 23rd against Detroit, absolutely set this team back. And the fact that Dallas only dropped a third in the Central during that stretch is borderline miraculous. Really, considering that this is easily the most dangerous division in hockey right now, it's borderline miraculous. But now that they're starting to claw their way back into the win column, it's worth talking about what's improving and what still looks ugly. So, first off, the Stars finally started playing something that resembles a complete game, minus the absolutely cursed puck luck against Columbus. Credit where it's due. Casey DeSmith, who is arguably one of the best backup goaltenders in the league, kept Dallas in that game the entire way. He gave up 1 goal midway through the first period and was lights out after that. The Stars just couldn't buy one. Multiple posts, quality chances, all of it. Sometimes the hockey gods just laugh at you. The power play, however, showed up in a big way against Boston, and Wyatt Johnston continues to show exactly why he's being groomed to wear the C once Jamie Benn finally hangs him up. His power play goal against St. Louis gives him 17 power play goals on the season, top of the league. That also puts him 1 away from the franchise single-season record of 18 that was set by Mike Modano back in 1993-94 season. We've still got about 30 games left. That record, kind of like Ralph from The Simpsons, is in danger. And that gritty win against St. Louis, that matters. Beating Boston convincingly is one thing. Grinding out a close physical win against a desperate Blues team is another. That is playoff-style hockey. And it's encouraging to see Dallas prove that they can win both ways. Now, one of the new things that I'm doing here is highlight, lowlight, MVP, LVP. Now, my MVP of the week is going to be Jason Robertson. And frankly, it shouldn't even be a discussion. He's been the engine of the Stars offense, scoring when it actually matters and doing exactly what you pay a top-line winger to do. His game winner against St. Louis pushed him over 30 goals, making him the first American to hit that mark this season. Now, that of course, somehow, still wasn't enough to earn him a spot on the U.S. Olympic roster. Apparently being one of the most productive American scorers in the league just isn't a qualifying metric anymore. But I'm sure the selection committee had very good reasons that they'll never have to explain. Now, we need to talk about our LVP of the week, Thomas Harley. Brother secured the bag and immediately turned into a turnover vending machine. He's single-handedly putting bakeries out of business with how many turnovers he's serving up. Harley just signed an 8-year extension worth roughly $10.5 million per year. And with that comes expectations, especially when you're stepping into a bigger role with more responsibility. I don't care how many puck touches he gets. When you can't get the puck out of your own zone cleanly, that's a problem. A lot of Harley's turnovers are self-inflicted in the defensive end, and they lead directly to extended zone time and high-danger chances. The only reason it doesn't blow up on the scoreboard every night is because the team as a whole, Ottinger included, has been good enough to clean it up afterwards. But that's not sustainable hockey. The offensive numbers simply do not justify the defensive lapses that we're seeing. Bro secured the bag and fell off harder than Ezekiel Elliott. And he needs to figure it out. expeditiously. Um, Now, taking a look at the Robertson conversation. That's a big one. Now, this is where the conversation around Jason Robertson needs to get very, very real and very fast. There's a lazy narrative floating around that he's a one trick pony. And sure, if the trick is scoring goals nigh at will, then yeah, guilty as charged. But if you're going to have a one trick pony, make it the kind that's top three in the entire league in goals scored. It's a hell of a pony to have in your stable. Robertson's value to this team cannot be overstated. He's the engine of the offense, the guy defenses game plan for every single night, and the player who consistently turns half chances into goals. Those guys do not grow on trees. They don't get magically easier to replace once they're gone. The Stars have to get him extended. Not just because he's producing now, but because elite goal scorers in their prime are exactly the kind of players you build cup windows around. Now, that doesn't mean, back the brink, struck up blindly, and start handcuffing yourself financially for the next decade. No, it has to be a smart extension. The Stars need to keep working with Robertson's camp to find a deal that rewards him appropriately, keeps him in Dallas long term, and still gives the front office flexibility to keep moving pieces around. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about winning a contract negotiation, it's about chasing what actually matters: Lord Stanley's Cup. And if the Stars are serious about that pursuit, Jason Robertson has to be part of the long-term plan. Period. Um, Now, moving on to the hard court. A little quick housekeeping item first. I was going to wait to make this video until after, but the game between the Mavericks and the Bucks was postponed after Dallas couldn't get out of DFW because of the weather. Nothing like Mother Nature calling a timeout on the NBA schedule. Now, results-wise, the Mavericks, much like the Stars, went 2-1 in their last 3 games since Sunday. Wins over the Knicks and the Warriors, followed by the loss to the Lakers last night. And honestly, that pretty much sums up this team right now. Frustrating, but not hopeless. Cooper Flagg didn't miss a beat after sitting out with an injury. If anything, the time off might have helped. His ability to consistently get downhill has forced defenses to sell out on stopping the drive, and really that's opened up his step back and his post work in a big way. He's not just getting buckets, he's manipulating coverage, which is wild for a 19-year-old, and barely 19 at that, like 19 years and 1 month. But looking at these last 3 games, you can finally see why this team keeps teasing optimism. Dallas showed real offensive balance against New York and Golden State, getting production from guys most people weren't circling at the start of the season. Max Christie and Najee Marshall stepped up as legitimate scoring options. Flagg continues to flash why he's the future, and the ball movement actually made sense when the spacing was right. Even in the Lakers' loss, the late collapse doesn't erase the fact that Dallas was competitive for most of the night against a veteran team led by elite stars, which matters. Now, none of this magically fixes the roster mess, the cap crunch, or the long-term questions hanging over this franchise. But it does show that there's something here. And if the front office can make a few smart, well-timed moves instead of swinging for the fences like they're playing MLB The Show, there's at least a pathway toward turning flashes of competence into something sustainable. It's not a finished product. But for the first time in a bit, the future doesn't feel completely bleak. This matters even more when you factor in the growing noise out of the organization that the Mavericks would like to move on from Anthony Street Clothes Davis as soon as humanly possible, as well as Anthony Davis's party wanting to find a new place for him to go. There is interest around the league, potentially even from some playoff teams that convince themselves of the same thing every year. If we can just get AD healthy for 2 months, we're a contender. And honestly, let him dream. If Dallas can sell that pitch to the right, desperate front office, they might be able to flip AD for something that actually helps them move forward. No, you're not getting a young superstar back. Let's still live in reality here. But a quality starter on an expiring deal, maybe a couple of useful rotational pieces, and a pick or two, that starts to look like real progress. That's how you rebuild without fully bottoming out. It's not flashy, it won't win the press conference, and Twitter will probably hate it. But it restocks the draft cupboard, adds flexibility, and gets this team moving instead of standing still and hoping health magically fixes everything. So, while the Mavericks are trying to figure out that mess, the Dallas Cowboys finally made a move as far as the defensive coordinator goes. The Dallas Cowboys hiring Christian Parker as their new defensive coordinator is, at the very least, an encouraging step in the right direction. Parker's widely viewed around the league as one of the brighter young coaching minds, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and his resume backs that up. He served as a passing game coordinator and defensive backs coach with the Eagles, and before that, he was the DB coach in Denver. The background tells you where his strengths are: coverage structure, communication on the back end, and modern pass defense concepts. And frankly, improvement was mandatory because a wet paper bag would have represented at least a mild upgrade over Matt Eberflus and his abysmal tenure as defensive coordinator. The bar wasn't just low, it was underground. Um, Parker clears it easily on paper. Where this gets interesting and where the real evaluation begins is how Parker handles the entire defensive operation, not just the secondary. Coaching defensive backs is one thing, running a full defense is another. He's now responsible for the front seven, pressure packages, run fits, situational football, in-game adjustments, and tying it all together week to week. That's a very different job, and it's the biggest unknown in this hire. That said, if there's one immediate area where this move should pay dividends, it's in the defensive backfield, which directly aligns with one of the Cowboys' most glaring issues from last season. Poor communication, busted coverages, lack of discipline and leverage, and an inability to limit explosive plays plagued this defense. Parker's specialty should help clean that part up, especially if he can establish cohesion and a real accountability on the back end. But let's be clear, this hire alone does not fix everything. The Cowboys still desperately need to address the pass rush, the linebacker core, and, just as importantly, the scheming and structure needed to stop the run. No coverage unit survives long when quarterbacks are comfortable and linebackers are getting swallowed by unblocked linemen. Parker can elevate the secondary, but he's going to need personnel help and a coherent front seven plan to make this defense functional as a whole. So this is a promising hire, not a cure-all, but a real step forward. The upside is there. The floor is higher than what we just watched. Now the question becomes whether Christian Parker can scale his strengths beyond the back four, command the entire defense, and finally bring some accountability and modern structure to a unit that has been badly lacking both. If he can do that, and if the front office follows through by fixing the pass rush and the linebacker group, the Cowboys defense might finally stop tripping over itself every Sunday. Honestly, that alone would feel like progress. Now, taking a kick from the gridiron, moving on over to the diamond, the Rangers actually made a big swing, taking a trade with the Washington Nationals to bring in Mackenzie Gore. It's one of the moves that's going to live in the gray area of public opinion for a while, and honestly, that's fine. Personally, I like this deal for the Rangers, especially when you zoom out, you look at what they really gave up versus what they got back. Yes, it cost a haul of prospects, but several of those names that they weren't blocked out by stars, they just were blocked by fit. They weren't positions of immediate or even medium-term need. You're trading in lottery tickets that you hope turn into MLB contributors someday for a young, all-star caliber left-handed starter who's already proven he can handle big league innings, even if it was while carrying the load for a rebuilding franchise. Gore was asked to be the guy on a Nationals team that simply wasn't built to support him. That alone can explain a lot of the inconsistency and the rough patches that we saw from him last year. Pitching with no margin for error every fifth day is a great way to develop bad habits. Now, he doesn't have to do that. With the Rangers, Gore will slide in behind Jacob deGrom and Nathan Eovaldi, two legitimate aces, two professionals, and two guys who know exactly what it takes to manage expectations, workload, and pressure. That mentorship alone is worth its weight in gold. Then there's the ballpark factor, which actually matters here. Globe Life Field, the retractable roof dome the Rangers play in now, is a far more neutral and often pitcher-friendly environment compared to Globe Life Park next door, the old open-air stadium that basically doubled as a home run derby in the Texas heat. Gore won't be battling jet streams, 105-degree afternoons, and souvenir-level fly balls anymore. He'll be pitching in a controlled environment that actually rewards command and pitch quality, which, should he be able to find it, will help him settle in and find consistency. Then you add in the fact that the Rangers have Gore under club control until 2028, barring any CBA curveballs, of course. And suddenly, this move makes even more sense. That's multiple years of cost controlled upside and a rotation that badly needed another long term anchor. I genuinely believe the Rangers can unlock more of Gore's potential. This isn't a desperation move, it's a calculated one. Best case, you turn him into a true top of the rotation arm. An ace, even. Worst case, you still end up with a high end reliable starter in a league where pitching depth disappears fast. And that's a risk I am more than willing to take. And that's going to do it for this episode of the No Nonsense Podcast. If you stuck it out with me, I appreciate you more than the Cowboys appreciate restructuring contracts. As always, I want to hear what you think. What you agree with, what you don't, and what you want covered next. Hit me up, drop a comment, argue respectfully or disrespectfully as long as it's funny. Because if it wasn't for you listening, there'd be no reason for me to do this. I'm Caleb Nunn. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.